TechDaily.ai, your source for technical information. This deep dive is sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, hyperconverged in VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, SA365, a turnkey security appliance, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com or email your project requirements to sales@stonefly.com. Today, we're going to dig into something absolutely vital, but maybe sometimes overlooked: physical security in data centers.
Yeah, it's fundamental. We often focus on the cyber side, but
Yeah.
the physical side is just as critical.
Exactly. So we'll break down the key ideas, the practices that, protect the actual buildings, the racks, the equipment inside these places.
Think of it as the essential guide, what keeps the tangible parts safe.
Kind of the Cliff's Notes for data center physical security. And we're drawing on, well, a bunch of expert thinking here, best practices, compliance stuff, even how standards like PCI DSS play a role.
Right, it all ties together. So physical security in this context is more than just locks on doors. Yeah,
Definitely more.
it's about protecting the data itself, obviously, but also the networks, the mechanical gear cooling, power.
The utilities feeding the place.
Absolutely. If any of that gets physically messed with, you've got a huge problem.
So how do you approach protecting all that? Is there a framework?
There is. People often talk about a physical asset protection framework, or PAP. It helps structure your thinking, make sure you cover all the physical
Specific
assets.
framework. Okay.
And it's crucial to remember, this physical security isn't in a silo. It has to work hand in glove with your logical security, your network security.
Right, a holistic view.
Okay.
So if we're building this strategy, what are the main pillars?
Good question. There are really 4 cornerstones. First up is deterrence.
Okay, deterrence, making bad guys think twice.
Exactly. Creating the perception that getting in or doing something malicious is just too hard or too risky.
How do you do that? Guards? Lights?
Yep. Things like visible security personnel, good lighting, clear signage. This also connects to something called CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. Basically, using the building and landscape design itself to discourage bad behavior. It's kind of a secondary function, but still important.
Interesting. So designing the space smartly can deter threats. What's next?
Next is detection. This is a primary function. It's all about identifying unauthorized people or activities as early as you possibly can.
So catching them in the act or trying to act?
Precisely. This is where your tech comes in. Sensors on doors, windows, motion detectors.
Cameras?
Video surveillance, yeah. And alarm systems that actually trigger when something's wrong.
Yeah.
The quicker you detect, the faster you can react.
Makes sense. So deter, detect. What's number 3?
Number 3 is delay, also a primary function. This is about making it take longer, making it harder for an intruder to actually reach their target.
Putting obstacles in their way.
Physical obstacles, think reinforced walls, strong doors, secure cages, even just the layout of the building forcing them through multiple checkpoints.
So even if they're detected, they can't just rush straight to the servers.
Right. That delay buys you crucial time. A standard door might take seconds to breach, a hardened one could take minutes. That's huge.
Okay, delay is key. What's the final cornerstone?
The 4th is response, also primary and maybe the most adaptable part. This is your ability to actually do something once an incident is detected.
Sending in the cavalry.
Pretty much.
No.
Getting the right personnel guards, maybe law enforcement dispatched quickly and accurately. Having solid communication systems during an event is vital here too.
Got it. Deter, detect, delay, respond. The 4 Ds. How do they work together best?
That leads us straight into the concept of protect in depth.
Ah, the onion analogy. Right, layers.
Exactly like an onion. Or concentric circles. You have your most valuable asset, your data, at the core.
And you surround it with multiple layers of security.
Yes. Someone trying to get to the core has to defeat layer after layer. The site perimeter, the building shell, the data hall itself, maybe even locked racks.
So security at the campus level, then the building, then the specific room, then the rack itself.
You've got it. And critically, each layer should ideally use different types of controls. Maybe a fence, then a card reader, then biometrics, then a physical lock, diverse and complementary.
So one trick won't defeat everything.
That's the goal, which ties into another key idea: balanced protection.
Balanced, meaning?
Meaning you need a good mix. You can't just rely on tech or just on guards or just on strong walls. You need a balance of electronic systems, structural hardening, and human procedures and personnel.
The whole package.
The whole package. And like we said, this physical security needs to be balanced and integrated with your logical and network security too. It's all one ecosystem.
Makes total sense. Now, thinking about a data center that's already built and running,
Yeah.
how do these principles apply day to day? You mentioned the life cycle.
Right. Data centers have a life cycle.
Yeah.
Planning, building, operating, and then, refreshing or decommissioning.
Yeah.
We're focusing mostly on the operational phase here.
Okay. Keeping things secure once the lights are on. What are the core design ideas that help with that?
Well, environment design and construction are fundamental, even for operations. How the place was built matters.
Like the materials used, the layout.
Exactly. Civil, structural, architectural choices. Landscaping, that CPTED thing again, eliminating hiding spots, using physically tough materials for walls, doors, windows, setting up barriers like fences or internal cages to channel movement and delay intruders.
So the building itself is an active part of the security.
Definitely. And related to that is spatial layout, how you arrange things inside.
Grouping sensitive areas together.
Yeah, consolidating spaces with similar security needs into zones. It simplifies access control, makes monitoring easier, improves alarm response, and ideally putting your really high security zones deep inside, away from exterior walls.
Create internal bottlenecks almost.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Control the flow. Now, moving on to the tech.
The gadgets. Okay.
We generally talk about three main security systems and technologies. First, access control systems, or ACS.
Key cards, fingerprint scanners, that kind of thing.
Yep. Systems that control who can go where and when. They use credentials, something you have like a card, something, a PIN, or something you are like a fingerprint or iris scan.
Multi-factor authentication fits in here.
Absolutely. Single or multi-factor. And the principle of least privilege is key. Only give people the minimum access they need to do their job. Plus, logging everything. Who went where, when.
Audit trails. Okay, ECS. What's next?
Next up, intrusion detection systems, or IDS. These are your silent watchers.
Looking for breaches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Detecting unauthorized entry into spaces, or maybe even unauthorized materials. They monitor doors, windows, motion, vibration sometimes. And they trigger alarms if something's wrong.
So ACS controls who should be there, IDS flags up if someone shouldn't be, or gets in the wrong way.
That's a good way to put it. And the third piece is video surveillance systems, VSS.
Cameras everywhere.
Well, strategically placed cameras for monitoring what's happening live, assessing incidents, recording evidence for later.
And just the fact they're there can be a deterrent too, right?
It can, yeah, that psychological deterrence factor.
Mm-mm.
But the real magic happens when you integrate these three ACS, IDS, and VSS
How so?
when they talk to each other. So an IDS alarm triggers. The VSS automatically points the nearest camera to that spot, and the ACS logs show who badged in recently. It gives the security team instant situational awareness, much faster, much more effective response.
Okay, so the tech needs to be smart and connected. What about the people involved? The guards, the procedures?
That's security operations. Hugely important. This covers a few things. First, monitoring and response. Someone has to watch those systems, interpret the alarms, and dispatch the response according to plan.
And those plans need defined response times, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Based on how critical the area is and how much delay your physical barriers provide. Then there's secure escort. Procedures for when people need to be accompanied in secure areas. Visitors, technicians maybe.
Makes sense. What else?
Randomized recurring patrols. Having guards physically walk around, checking key areas, but not on a predictable schedule. Keeps potential intruders guessing.
Adds to that deterrence factor we talked about.
It does. And finally, incident reporting and investigations. Having clear, standardized ways to document security events and investigate what happened, why it happened, and how to prevent it next time. Maybe even using a formal quality management system approach, like ISO 9001.
Okay, a lot goes into the operational side. Now, you mentioned different levels, campus, building, space. Do the requirements change much?
They build on each other. There are some general requirements for pretty much any project. Things like thinking about security from day one in planning, having robust access control with logs, IDS, VSS, integrated monitoring, patrols if needed, and incident reporting. That's baseline.
Baseline. Okay. What about a big campus with multiple buildings?
Then you need to think bigger. Site-wide intrusion detection for shared infrastructure, broader camera coverage, ways to efficiently review alarms from different buildings remotely, maybe SLAs for response times, depending on where the incident is on campus, and clear rules for escorting people between buildings.
Scaling up the protection. What about inside a specific building?
At the building level, CPTED in the design is critical. Strong physical separation between secure zones and, say, public or office areas, managing different traffic flows, employees versus visitors versus deliveries, consistent access control layers within the building, IDS covering all those layers, cameras inside key areas and pathways.
Getting more granular, and then the actual data center space itself,
Okay.
the data hall.
For the space level, you need really robust construction. Walls, doors, ceiling, floor. Ideally locating it away from outside walls. Maybe needing asset-level controls like specific rack locks if the room-level access isn't tight enough. And definitely focused video surveillance inside the space, covering aisles, equipment.
Okay, and sometimes you need even tighter security, right, down to the component level.
Yeah. For the really critical stuff, yes. You might see specific cages or enclosures enforcing least privilege right at the rack or device, requiring multiple controls to be bypassed just to touch it. Multi-factor authentication is common here. Maybe sensors on the equipment itself looking for tampering. Dedicated camera views, full integration of all that tech, and a very strict chain of custody if anything needs to be investigated.
Wow, yeah, layers upon layers upon layers. Now, PCI DSS came up earlier. How does this physical security stuff relate directly to handling, say, credit card data?
It's absolutely core to PCI DSS compliance. Requirement 9 is all about restricting physical access to cardholder data.
So if you handle payment cards, you have to do this stuff.
You have to. The standard is specific.
Yeah.
You need controls for facility entry, ways to distinguish personnel from visitors. Badges are common.
Visitor logs.
Visitor logs, yes. Yeah. Controlling access to the actual sensitive areas where data is stored or processed. You need to physically secure media printouts, backup tapes, drives, whatever. Control how it's distributed, stored, and importantly, how it's destroyed securely when you don't need it anymore.
Destroying media securely, right.
Right.
Shredders, degaussers.
Exactly. And one more big one, protecting the actual payment devices, like PIN pads or terminals, from tampering or swapping.
So everything from the front door of the building down to the chip reader has physical security requirements under PCI DSS.
Pretty much, yeah. It underscores that data protection isn't just digital. The physical environment is a critical attack surface, too.
Okay, this has been a really thorough look. Let's try and summarize the big picture.
Sure. Data center physical security.
Yeah.
It's this layered, dynamic thing, right? Built on those 4 Ds. Deter, detect, delay, respond.
Applied through how you design the environment, the tech you use, and the procedures your people follow.
At all levels, campus, building, room, rack. The key is that balanced protect in depth strategy.
A comprehensive defense for the physical heart of our digital world.
Well put. And it has to keep evolving.
Right. Which leads to a final thought for everyone listening. We know threats are getting more sophisticated all the time, both physical and cyber. So, looking ahead, how does data center physical security need to change? How does it need to innovate to stay ahead of the curve in the coming years?
That's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? Something everyone in the industry needs to grapple with.
Definitely something to think about. TechDaily.ai, your source for technical information. This deep dive was sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, hyperconverged in VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, SA365, a turnkey security appliance, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com or email your project requirements to sales@stonefly.com.